Good evening, folks. Freddie Vasquez. Happy Sunday. Tonight, the case of CJ Hackett. New details are emerging. Join me. Good evening, folks. I'm Freddie Vasquez. This is Basement Politics Unfiltered. Tonight, let's go over some new details in regards to the CJ Hackett incident, the death of 16-year-old CJ Hackett, killed by a drunk driver, city employee. Folks. Good evening, folks. I'm Freddie Vasquez. Tonight, I have a guest on the phone with me. Is Carolyn Solari. She will be talking about some details that we have yet to hear. I should say, some of us anyway have yet to hear, and so I want to bring her on. So please just give me a second here. Hello, Carolyn. Hello.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Hi, Freddie. Yes,
How you doing? Good evening. If you can't hear Carolyn for whatever reason, please can someone just let me know on the comments there. So Carolyn, how you doing? You're nice.
Well,
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, you and I have been speaking about what's been happening recently. Some new details have been emerging in regards to CJ Hackett. Your nephew was with CJ the night he was killed on McLean by Stephan Dolan, an employee of the city of Yonkers who was driving drunk. So I'm just going to let you talk, Carolyn, for the most part. I may just ask a question or two, but I just want you to talk. And if anyone has questions or anything, you can comment there. But go ahead, Carolyn. I'll let you speak. You can start where you want to start.
I just want to say, this is not about me, the community advocate. This is about me, the aunt. I am the aunt for AJ, who was with CJ, and my condolences to the Hackett family. I know they are devastated and distraught at the loss of their son. Their son was a very good boy. He was, loved his family, loved his sister and brother, and, loved all his friends. He's well loved by everybody. And that's what people need to remember. All anybody is looking for is the truth and for justice for CJ. And in order to do that, we need the truth. AJ was with CJ, and I heard the 911 call. And I'm sorry. I heard the 911 call and the terror and the fear in my nephew's voice when he was talking about begging for help for his friends. And I'm sorry.
That's okay.
And I'm not going to talk about anything other than the beginning of it and say to you that Stephan Dolan was a 46-year-old man that decided to drive drunk. Okay, that was his choice. I'm not going to get into the before, the morning, middle, and the after. We could do that after the case is over. But his father and his uncle were the Dolan brothers, Joe Dolan and Bob Dolan. One was a sergeant, one was a detective sergeant. Okay, and they worked for the city of Yonkers for years. His stepmother, meaning Stephan Dolan, worked also for the city of Yonkers and the water department. He had a six-figure job. One of the detectives investigating the case, father was also a cop, and where I started asking questions immediately is when he turned around and said that, meaning the detective investigating it, that bad things happen to good people. Good people, even if he didn't wake up that morning in his mind going to kill a young man.
Right.
The fact was he left the scene of the accident. He left a boy mortally wounded, and he left another boy frantically trying to get help for him.
Just to really,
46-year-old.
I'm sorry, Karen, just to clear it up. So Stephan Dolan, his father is a retired Yonkers police detective, and the police detective now investigating the incident, the death of CJ Hackett. His father is also a retired Yonkers police officer, and the fathers actually retired around the same time and knew each other, right? Just to be clear.
Joe Dolan was his father. He was a sergeant. Bob Dolan was his captain sergeant, which was the uncle. And then the investigating detective, his father was also a cop. I don't have confirmation on what it is, so I'm not speculating.
Right.
So he was also a cop. So what the question is, and what we need to get to the bottom of too, is why it took them so long to get Stephen Dolan. And here's the questions that even become more questions now. Why is it the captain that found the van? Okay, because supposedly it was the captain. And again, I'm not going to get into specifics, but the captain knew the Dolan brothers, and they were all part of this Emerald Society, which is like a fraternity. Now, when it came up the other day,
I'm sorry, Karen. I just want to, just so I can be clear, so for people listening. So
yeah.
you're wondering, and the family's wondering, why is it that it took so long to find Stephen Dolan, right? Why did they have, why did it take 3 days? Along the route there on McLean Avenue, there's a bunch of security cameras. There's probably over 20 cameras there, right? So why isn't it that the footage, they can use the footage to identify him, especially because he is someone that's known? Were there any plate readers in the area? Did they capture the plate, right? And so that's a question that the family has, and other people have. And as well as, just the relationship, right? And I've spoken about this nepotism thing and just the relationship that Stephen Dolan has with, members of the police department. And now you're referring to the Emerald Society. I'm sorry. Hello, Carolyn? Yeah. With the Emerald Society also, I'm not, what is the Emerald Society? Or
it's like a fraternity for different, I don't know the exact, it's like an Irish American fraternal organization.
Okay.
And I think what heightens my, what made my questions really come to light was, after your interview with my brother who came on here to say, hey, this is what happened. Because some people were saying, oh, he got 7 years. And, they didn't know the fact. There's a real problem with news now. The news, especially now, they're all paid off. It's not like you have a Channel 7 and Channel 2 when they're really telling you the news anymore, as you know.
Right.
You have to go through the politics of it.
Right.
So
not a lot
my
of
brother
information being put out there.
Right. So misinformation. So he was upset with the fact of, this is just beginning. This is not something, we haven't even gone to this thing, the last court hearing was for 6 charges. So here's the question. Had he been caught sooner, and whatever his alcohol blood level was at the time, he was missing out. The longer the clock ticked, is longer that he went without having harder charges, harder felonies that would bring more time.
Right.
That's what it comes down to. That's what the questioning is.
Right. So that's why you got, you, the family are asking, the question of why did it take so long? Because it was important to, apprehend him that night so they can do an appropriate breathalyzer and blood tests, to show exactly the amount of alcohol, level he had in his system at the time that it happened, because that plays a difference in, what charges they bring and the amount of time that he can, he faces, right? And because he wasn't caught until 3 days later, while yes, they do know that he was drinking because he admitted to it. In fact, he admitted to 17 drinks. They still weren't able to measure that officially through a breathalyzer or blood work, right? So they can't really judge exactly how much. And so, and also, and not, again, I don't want to speculate, but just, we don't know anything, whatever was in his system, right? He can have had a lot of other things in his system, but because they were not able to, apprehend him until 3 days later, or they didn't bring him in until 3 days later, we will never know. And so the question is, did they apprehend him that night, and then did they let him go? Because when your brother was on with me that night, he did say that, a call came through the radio saying that they got the guy. But supposedly, it wasn't the guy. Right. And so, that's some questions that I know, that you and the family have. Was it really the guy, or Was it not the guy?
Right. And we're just trying to get to the bottom line, to the truth.
Right.
You know, living in Yonkers, and you know how I know how the politics of Yonkers work, how the nepotism works. I mean, when my brother came back after he went to the detective division, and the detective said to him, "Bad things happen to good people." You're talking about a boy that's deceased, that's never going to go to his prom, never going to go to work, you know, can't hug his mom again. You know, that wasn't the proper thing to say. Meanwhile, he had just gotten his healed 3 months earlier from Sano, you know, and here's the thing. It's, you know, all right, so the bottom line basically is what was done in the beginning. And here, in Freddie, we've had this discussion before. First responders mean everything to me.
Right.
I don't think I give them $500,000 because I've seen, you know, I grew up with firemen, I've grown up with police officers. I've seen the aftermath of when they retire. You know, if they continue, especially firemen with health issues from carrying the oxygen on the back. I've known people.
Right.
You know,
so
that
this
are now
is not an attack on first responders, right? It's not about, you know, the police or this is just
I say get them. This is about this is more the politics of it. It's not our guys on the street. These aren't our guys out there investigating it. The higher you get up, you know, it's where the politics come in for it. You know, what jobs you get or where you are. And again, I am not saying that 100% this is what we say is going on, but there's a lot of questions here that need to be answered. You know, and when my brother said, "Hey, you're a part of that Emerald Society too. You had to know them." One of there was 3 gentlemen. So one was very honest. Yeah, I knew them. So we were on the job together. I knew them. And then this other gentleman, the captain, was like, "There's like 600 guys there." You were better off saying, "Yeah, I knew them," because supposedly all were part of the society. You're all from Yonkers. You all grew up from Yonkers. And listen, I know I'm putting myself in the line of fire once again, like I've done, and you know this many, many times. But at the end of the day, we need to know the truth, because it's the fact that he even found the van. How did the captain? I mean, captains usually don't go out looking anywhere. Right. How did you find the van? How did you know where to look?
Right.
You know what I mean? And again, if I'm wrong, I'm sorry. But you know what? I'm sorry.
I just want to touch on that. So you're saying the captain found the van. What do you mean? He's the one that located the van. Where did he locate the van at? And was he just out searching for the van?
I don't want to get into specifics because again, I don't want anything to, to affect the case that way.
Right.
All I'm saying is that you need to investigate from the night this happened. You know, they have his phone, supposedly have his text messages meeting Stephen Dolan. Did he call his dad? Did he call his uncle? Who did they call? What happened? And if we're wrong, I will say, I'm sorry. I will come back on here and say, I'm sorry. But guess what? At the end of the day, this should not be about somebody's ego. You should be more than willing to go above and beyond to prove that everything was done by the book. This is a child, a good boy. I mean, this is a kid that, he has a wonderful group of friends who, again, hung out with, one of the Stano great nephews. They're all good boys. So he deserves that. He deserves to make sure he gets full justice. And if it's a difference between 2 to 7 or 6 up to 15, and up to that 15 is gone now, and we can never get it back because someone might have, pushed the timeline, then they need to be held accountable. And if not, then again, I'm sorry, but there's a boy that's on, a family that's distraught. Okay, and justice and the truth should come out. Okay, and this is what needs to stop in Yonkers. People are speaking out. People are putting 2 and 2 together. It's even people on their own force are like, here, put A, B, C, and D together. Add it up. And I'm not talking about just people that aren't on the force anymore. I'm talking about people on the force. And again, we are very blessed with the force we have. The police force, the firemen. Okay, again, we don't have enough. I think we need. And again, we'll get into that another day. I don't know what the numbers are per civilian, per resident, how many cops are supposed to have, but I know there was some kind of law going in or it's going to be passed about that. Because we don't have enough. And it's not fair to our cops to overburden them. with all this growth and not have enough of them.
No,
But that
definitely.
said,
It's not about the police department, here in the city of Yonkers. It's about, again, like you mentioned, the nepotism, right, which allows us a few, and it's not just in the police department; it's in every department here in the city, right, just within the city. And these few individuals, allow for things like this to happen, for cover-ups because of, other members are part of the nepotism system, as I call it. And I've mentioned this. You had, the gentleman Akeem Jamal driving drunk the wrong way on Central Avenue, crashes into somebody, hurts somebody, right? What happens of that? Nothing. He moves on to get promoted. So when you allow these things to happen and there's no consequences faced, then people feel invincible. They feel emboldened to do it. They don't care. They're not going to get away with it. My dad is so-and-so, or my mother's so-and-so, right? And so now here we are. There's a 16-year-old boy who was killed by someone driving drunk, who is a part of the nepotism system, right? Whose father is a former detective, knows the inner workings of the police department, and is, was a high-ranking person when he retired. The guy investigating it, his father also retired around the same time. I'm sure they knew each other. Was their call made? He did stop when he hit CJ. He looked and then decided to continue going. And instead of turning himself in, he went to work like nothing happened. And so was he informed to do that? Did he make a phone call? And so that's why it's important that the family and the police also, release the phone records, show the phone records. Did he make any calls? And to who? And then if he made a call to somebody, then let's look at those phone records. Who did they call? Because again, there were police officers who said they caught somebody, they caught the guy, but it wasn't the guy. I mean, they had video camera footage. I'm sure they saw who the person in the vehicle was, or at least what kind of vehicle they were looking for. It was at 2:30 in the morning, so not too many cars out there, and so that's very suspicious. And the family deserves, answers. They deserve the truth. And the guy was arrested in City Hall at work. Right? And so now we have to find justice for CJ, because justice for CJ means justice for the family. And it also means that this will hopefully stop. And, there won't be another employer. Other employees will think twice about it, because I have evidence myself of other employees, supervisors, going to bars with city vehicles, leaving these bars drunk, driving an hour home. And so what if that person kills somebody? So we have to find out the truth. We cannot just allow this to go, And so again, the captain, and do you know the captain's name that discovered the vehicle? You're welcome. You're very welcome. It's funny that the captain, who does not wear a body camera, is the one that found the van. Interesting. And that's something that people fought for. And they spent a lot of money on these body cams, and now they don't wear them. Then what's the point? Right. So tell me what else, Carolyn, I know after your brother was on the show, the police department detectives reached out to him, correct?
Yeah.
And they wanted to talk to him about that. They said they wanted to clarify some things up. Tell me about that.
They just wanted him to come in and talk to him about, I guess, going on your podcast. I guess they watched, and get to the bottom of any questions that he had, if he had any more information, and I guess basically try to assure him that there was no cover up or, no wrongdoing, that there was a timeline for it. And I think that's what made it 100 times worse is once we found out that the captain is the one that found the car, and we were already given, we grew up here. I mean, I've been here, I came in when I was 2 years old. I'm 54 years old. So, we grew up with a lot of firemen, a lot of police, and, we were being told things from the get-go. And again, I don't want to discuss the case itself, but, we were told, watch for this or watch for that, or here's the connection. And again, I was not getting involved at all, and I would never have gotten involved. This is a boy that lost his life, and I sat next to his father, who was crying at the court hearing, and his mother is just devastated, and his brother and sister, they're never going to be the same. And it's like, Now you're saying, wait, so what do you mean the captain found? So it brings more questions. You gave us more questions than you did if would have just left it alone, because now the question is, how did you find it? Why did you have it under surveillance? Why didn't you just go get him? Like, it just doesn't make sense. Like the same thing with the team. He was drunk driving. Was he handcuffed to his bed when he was, even though he was very, very hurt? No, we know for a fact, from certain police officers. But if that was anybody else's child, you would have been handcuffed to that bed, hurt or not. Right. And here this is what the problem is with having, no term limits, not to bring this in as in politics, but when you have somebody with that much power, and then these other people in every part of the city that are that commissioners and captains, that's all politics there. Like I said again, it's not our guys on the street. That's not our guys putting their lives on the line every day. I'm sure he did his time. I mean, the guy's there forever. Which God bless, thank you. But now, you're in a position where, is it, what we're thinking is, what happened? You push the timeline back, didn't you? And it's very simple. We need an investigation into what happened, how did it happen? And again, if we're wrong, I'm sorry. But you know what? You're city employees, paid with taxpayer money, and at the end of the day, you shouldn't feel some type of way. Even though we're saying this, if you've made us more suspicious than we were before. And so again, he deserves justice.
Yeah, absolutely.
He deserves justice. His family deserves justice. It's never going to bring him back. No. But at least they know everything was done that could possibly be done. And,
and I mean, and hopefully, to prevent this, because again, it's not the first time that, a city employee has driven drunk and it's been covered up. So it's not like this is a conspiracy theory that, that's being put out here by you or your brother or the family. No, it's that there's a lot of, questions that need to be answered, a lot of things that are suspicious. And again, it's happened before. And so we're talking about, an election year coming up. Right. And also the bar that he was at. Right. I'll say it's a bar called Alibi, which is owned by a Spano relative. And so did they want to keep this hush hush in order to, protect the Spano relatives establishment, also to keep any negative press off the Spano family, running for another fourth term, is already pushing it. Remember they called for Duo to be closed. John Rubo, who's the councilman that represents that district where CJ Hackett was killed, called for Duos to be closed down after an incident there. The mayor went and closed it down. They were all proud of that, but yet they didn't mention anything about this bar where apparently he was served 17 drinks. This is what he admitted, that he had 17 drinks.
Wait, just so I can see, and I don't want to get into specifics of the case, but I will say it wasn't all there. I don't want to say anything more, Freddie. I don't want to.
Well, from what I'm hearing is that he was at a darts tournament, so he had been drinking earlier, but he went home. Right. And then at home, he got bored and said, you know what, I'm going to go back out, where he got into his van, went back out, and then he had more drinks before,
What I'll say is what the DA said in court when I was sitting there. The DA said that he had 17 drinks between drinks and shots. And then 1 minute before he got in his van, he had a beer in his hand and got in the van and hit CJ. Okay. A 46-year-old man who has teenagers at home made that decision to get in there. So guess what, guys? He stopped being a good person the minute he drove there, hit CJ, and left the scene, and left him mortally wounded on a street corner, and my nephew trying to get him help. You understand? This boy is never coming back. So anybody, if this is, as we're being told by several other people that are in the police force, if this is something that was a cover-up, or just let's push it back, we know we're not going to get him out of trouble, but at least he won't have to do as much time if we don't get him with his blood alcohol content.
Right.
Again, if I'm wrong, all I'll say is I'm sorry. Because guess what? I'm not sorry that we don't get a thorough investigation.
Right.
My nephew is dealing with survivor's guilt, with the fact that maybe I could have pushed him out of the way, or maybe he could have hit me too. He wouldn't have hit CJ so hard, and then maybe, we would have survived. To hear that from a little boy that, has my heart and dealing with the fact that the rest of his life, his friend's not there, and his parents and his siblings, I mean, his mother was so destroyed, his father, that he's a junior, we're real people. And that's what people have to understand. It's to be about the real people out here. They get so involved in, who they know and nepotism and all that, you forget. Like, and here, the Emerald Irish Society, AJ was Irish. I mean, CJ was Irish. He comes from the Irish community as well.
Right.
I mean, this is what you do. And I don't care if he was blue, black, yellow, green, Giovanni the dinosaur. Everybody deserves a right and justice.
Right.
We deserve the truth. And that's what it comes down to.
And
now that you've made more questions, then this needs to be investigated by a higher level.
There definitely needs to be an independent investigation. I definitely agree to that. Someone outside agency. And, I wanted to just mention, as you were talking about CJ, and your nephew, really quick, just that they have tried to make them look like, just like they were bad kids, right? That they were drinking and, maybe they were rowdy. They were doing something inappropriate and almost in a way that, they kind of not deserved it, but kind of brought it on themselves, which I thought was horrible to do. I think I look at that as further victimizing the family, who's already lost their loved one, the child, forever. And now you're going to go around, insinuating that they were drinking and that they were drunk also. And so it's kind of they both were wrong, right? It's crazy.
I am not going to even give that, any part of my breath when it comes to victim shaming. This is a 16-year-old child. He was a 46-year-old man. He decided to get in that van and drive drunk, hit this boy, and leave him. I will say it a million times. The minute he left that scene of the accident, bad enough he was driving drunk, but to leave the scene of the accident and leave CJ mortally wounded, that was the end for me. You are a beast. You are an animal. Okay, you have children at home, and this is what you did. So I won't even give that the time of day, whatever they want to say, because at the end of the day, they were pedestrians, and he was driving a van, and he killed him, and it was at high enough speed, which I don't want to get into that either now, but there will be much more that will come out later on. Again, I don't want to say anything more.
And what's important,
what actually happened.
It's important to speak. I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. It's important to speak out, and I appreciate you coming out, and really being brave and speaking out about it and, fighting for the justice, because again, I said, this has happened before and now it's a 16-year-old child. And as someone says here, this is a baby, right? And what if it was your child? Maybe today it wasn't, but tomorrow it could be if we do not stop this. Enough is enough. And as John Rubo said when he spoke about the Duos incident, when he wanted to shut that establishment down, he said, we have to nip this in the bud. But had they truly nipped this in the bud, maybe we wouldn't be here, right? Because this isn't, the first incidents of, people being drunk, coming out of these bars and fights and, all kinds of craziness, right? And so, not to tie it to political, to make it about politics, but ultimately we have to ensure that we have the right leaders in place. So when this does happen, there's equal justice distributed, right? And people aren't protected and allowed to leave the scene so that they don't receive the max. I mean, the DA is already talking about probably he'll get 2 to 2.5 years.
I don't want to talk about it. I just want to concentrate on the fact that there's doubt and even more doubt now. And we need somebody independent out of Yonkers that's going to investigate this to say what exactly happened. Again, a captain must be on the force for years and years and years. So I would hope he would understand the way we feel and the questions we have and respect that. You would think after all these years. So if we're wrong, we're sorry, but not really sorry, because at the end of the day, if these are the things coming to us, then we need to know the truth. And here's what they made sure when they had my brother there. They said, "Oh, what thing you were saying was he was right under our noses." But, he wasn't all those days. He was also at City Hall. Acacia Center, City Hall, So it doesn't matter if he was in the detective division, which I know from one of the workers, he was there one day. But you're under the mayor's nose where you have to walk in and there's a cop sitting there at the desk. I mean, again, we need to know the truth. What happened? Because at the end of the day, the buck stops with the mayor.
Right.
Okay. And regardless, the mayor is all over this, between one of the bars being owned by his nephew who's married to his niece, between one of the children hanging out with this group of kids. I mean, like, we need justice. We just want the truth. We want CJ to rest in peace. We want the parents to at least know that everything was done to make sure he got justice.
Absolutely.
Just that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And they deserve it. CJ deserves it. Your nephew deserves it. The entire family deserves it. And the city of Yonkers deserves it. And so it's time that we, fight hard and we seek justice for CJ. I mean, I'm going to continue speaking about it. You're always welcome to come on and talk about it. The family is always welcome to reach out to me and talk about it, because we won't stop until we get justice. And I don't make a penny off this. I just want to be very clear to anybody that's watching. I don't make a penny off this podcast. I don't take advertisements. I don't take anything. This podcast is strictly for information, transparency, to bring the truth and light to things that are happening here in the city of Yonkers, such as this. So I don't want anyone thinking that I'm doing this for any, kind of monetary gain or any other gain at all. I want justice for CJ just as much as his family does, just as much as Carolyn does. So,
hello?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm sorry.
Oh, there you go. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The only thing I'm asking you, and I'm asking you, that let's just make sure anything that comes out is fact.
Right.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm listening.
It has to be factual. Stay away from the fact of the case. Let that go to trial. Again, this is mostly about what happened that night. Was there any help to Stephan Dolan because of his father, the Dolan brothers and who they knew? And, what was the timeline pushed? Again, we were told they knew he was not going to get out of trouble, but did they help him get in less trouble?
Right.
And that's all we're asking. I'm begging you to please just not only go on the facts. Don't, please, CJ, just, don't speculate. Let's try to just stick to what facts that we have and stay away from the case and let that go through the DA and the courts and all that. But this part of it needs to be investigated, and we need to get to the bottom of it. And
it's an important fact. It's an important fact to know, because that is what's the difference between getting more time or being charged with facing more time than the time that he's facing now, because now he's only facing 2.5 to 7 years, while the family is going to face the rest of their lives with this pain. But had he been, caught that night, they had been able to do a, proper, blood test or blood work to determine exactly the content level of his alcohol in his body, and maybe anything else that he could be facing 10, 15, 20 years, right? So that's why it's important.
Yes. And please, again, I thank you for us coming out there. Like my brother said, he's, stepped away as far as they asked him not to come back on your podcast again. He didn't. I would never have come on here again, even as an advocate. I fight for injustice all over the city, not this. But when I heard that call and I heard my nephew's voice and him desperately trying to get help for his friends, and he didn't know what to do. He was 15 at the time that it happened. He didn't know how to help. And then the 911 operator either hung up on him or the call disconnected while he was screaming, begging for help. Again, we're just asking for an investigation higher up that will make sure that everything was done possible to give these things done.
Have you?
And thank you for your time.
Oh, you're welcome. One last question: had you or the family spoken to anyone about getting some answers on what transpired that night? Maybe about the phone records or anything. Is there someone saying, okay, we're going to look into that? I mean, is there anyone looking into it, investigating it, or that you've spoken to?
Well, we know they had, and again, I don't want to get into the case that way, but I would agree that phone records is the way to go. When something happens that night, who did he call? Who did Stephan Dolan call? Did he call his father? Then who did his father call?
Right.
You know, from what I've been told, even if he did call his dad for help or tell his dad what happened, the dad won't get in trouble. He's just a father. He's no longer an officer. So it's not something that he would get in trouble for. But, you know, had he called somebody aware of the investigation, then, you know, then that's a whole new ballgame. You know, and even then I've been told, hey, you know, they might get in some trouble, lose their job, but they'll still have their pension. If this is true, if
Right.
this is true, then, you know, that doesn't seem fair because you made a conscious decision if that's what you did and who you are. But, and again, if not, we apologize, but we deserve to. And because of the circumstances, I think anybody listening to the connection between the Dolan brothers, you know, and you know, one of the detectives and all these people that were former City of Yonkers, retired City of Yonkers officers to current City of Yonkers officers, you know, that it definitely warrants somebody to look into it and to make sure that everything was done right.
Right. I agree. I agree. Carolyn, thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to say before I let you go?
I just I'm going to pray for justice and pray for the Hackett family, that my heart goes out to them for their loss, to their children, to the aunts, the uncles. His grandma was at court. His uncle came to court. They came from Ireland. He was a very loved and is a very loved boy. And, you know, my nephew, I love you with all my heart. And I told him the only reason I was getting involved in this was for him, to help him. And the only thing AJ asks is to help find justice for CJ.
Right.
That's what he needs. That's what he has to find. He couldn't help him that night, but he just really wants to find justice. And that's what we need to do. We need to put the pressure on, find out exactly what happened in the beginning, and go from there.
Absolutely.
You
know, I agree. Thank you for your time. I appreciate you, you know, being so brave. I appreciate the family, you know, joining us. Also, they made a few comments. They also are, you know, saying we want justice for CJ and AJ. So thank you so much for your time. You know, thank you for everyone who's watched. I appreciate it, Carolyn. You know, my heart goes out to the family, my prayers. I truly mean that. You know, definitely say a prayer tonight, and I will do anything, you know, that I can, anything that you and the family needs of me. If I can do it, just let me know. I will do that. You know, that's what I'm here for now. So thank you so much, and may God bless you, and have a good night, Carolyn. Thank you. Folks, that was Carolyn Solari. Her nephew was with CJ Hackett the night that he was killed by Stephen Dolan. And, you know, I don't want to make this a political spectacle or, you know, anything about a podcast about me in basement politics. This is about CJ and just me being a vehicle to get the information out. That's it. You know, it's not about me. It's about the family and justice that they are seeking, and getting the answers, getting the truth, getting to the bottom of this, because it's very important. You know, Stephen Dolan has a family, I'm sure, that is also hurting and going through a lot now. He also has kids, and I'm not going to negate the fact that they are also, you know, going through something because they didn't ask for it. They had nothing to do with it. But we also must understand that a family, a mother and father, have lost their child, and that is something that they will live with for the rest of their life. They will not get to say, hello, I love you, to CJ, nor will they hear that back. And so we must remember that. And we must always think of the family, keep them in their prayers, and help them fight for the justice that they deserve, that CJ and AJ deserve. I'm Freddie Vasquez. Thank you for watching. This is Basement Politics. You can reach me at 914-228-2894 or politicwithfred@gmail.com. God bless you. God bless the family. And I truly mean that. Again, I don't do this for any other reason than to help as much as I can. And hopefully justice will be handed to CJ and his family. I'm Freddie Vasquez. Have a beautiful and blessed night. Thank you.